Tistina is the new TCG Exclusive Archtype. I was excited for these because I feel like the only thing we had until this point was like a little bit of lore and a little bit of like the artworks. I thought these looked incredibly cool, so I was looking forward to it. The first surprise here that is not necessarily a disappointment or anything is that they're all aqua, which based off the lore that they presented and based off the what they look like, I was expecting them to be more like rock type monsters, but I think they are all aquas, which just like from looking at it doesn't make that much sense to me. They don't really look like aquas, but I suppose kind of, you know, they're all kind of like blue-ish, or like, well, not all of them, but like, I guess, whatever, you know. I suppose the idea is that like it's like a liquid that turns into a crystal or something. Whatever, you know. Fine. we'll accept it. It's not the end of the world. I'm okay. Leo Boss, thank you for the 6 months. And Tyjantic, thank you for the 13 months. Appreciate you. Okay. Okay. Let us just hop right into the Tistina archetype, which, yeah, I don't really know what their thing is yet, so we'll see. Sentinel of the Tistina, level 3 wind aqua effect monster. If this card is in your hand or graveyard and you control a light Tistina monster, you can special summon this card. You can target a Tistina monster or a face down card you control, destroy it, then add a Tistina card from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Sentinel of the Tistina once per turn. Okay. Depending on how many good light Tistina monsters there are, this is a pretty solid effect, right? It's an extender. It can even be like card advantage when you can like discard it or send it to the graveyard by some shape or form. This is a good card, right? It's a good card. I don't know if they have synergy with like destroying your own cards, right? I'm not sure if they do that, but if they do, then that would also be pretty good. It can also destroy itself. So in the worst case, like if you have a light Tistina, you can just special this, destroy itself to add another Tistina card. This is just a solid card to start with, right? It's not gonna make the archetype. This card alone cannot carry the archetype. It doesn't present a win condition or anything, but this card is very solid for the archetype. There's a lot of archetypes out there that would really like this type of card, right? So yeah, that's a solid start to begin with. Now we have Hound of the Tistina, which is a level 4 Earth Aqua Effect monster. So far, no lights. If this card is in your hand or graveyard and you control a light Tistina monster, you can special summon this card. Ooh, they have the same thing going on for them. You can only use this effect of Hound of the Tistina once per turn. Tistina monsters you control can attack directly while your opponent controls a face-down defense position monster. Okay, this effect is relatively mediocre. It's only like a bonus. I mean, okay, it's interesting because Tistina monsters you control can attack directly while your opponent controls a face-down defense position monster. If this is translated correctly, does this mean, let's say my opponent has 4 face-up monsters and then 1 set monster, can I still attack directly? Like if this is, because that's what it sounds like. It sounds like as long as they have 1 face-down monster, I can just attack directly with everything. Which in this case, of course, yeah, okay, no, it's not a translation, of course, because it's like I'm used to cards being revealed in Japanese first, so my mind was like, oh, maybe it's a mistranslation, but of course, no, they were revealed in English. So of course, while your opponent controls a face down defense position monster, yeah, no, okay, if you can set one of your opponent's monsters face down, everything attacks directly. That's an interesting kind of effect for just going second, putting 8,000 damage onto the board and just swinging directly, ignore everything, just go for game. Interesting effect. However, I don't think that makes it good on its own. However, the fact that you just get it for free when it's in hand or graveyard could still make it somewhat playable. You know, you can get into rank 4s, you can link climb with this. Interesting card. Not as good as the first one, I think, because the first one adds, you know, utility, consistency by adding cards from your deck to your hand. This one is more like an OTK tool, but still not terrible. Okay, here we have Demigod of the Tistina, and this is the first light Tistina monster, which is a level 10 monster, Aqua effect. 2000 attack, 0 defense. If you control a Tistina card, you can special summon this card from your hand. Then you can add a Tistina spell trap from your deck to your hand. Okay, that's already incredibly powerful. During your opponent's turn, if you control Crystal God Tistina, which is apparently the big thingy that everything... Okay, a lot of stuff revolves around this card. If you control Crystal God Tistina quick effect, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. You can only use each effect of Demigod of the Tistina once per turn. Bro, that's just the Ruma Karma Cannon, isn't it? Is this the Ruma Karma Cannon, the archetype? That's funny. That is funny. I mean, it's even better than the Ruma Karma Cannon because it sends spell and traps to the graveyard, right? It gets rid of your opponent's field spells. It gets rid of continuous spell and traps. Like, you know, I don't know. Let's say your opponent has a monster and they activate Tenki. You can chain this to set the monster and then also send the Tenki to the graveyard. It is a good card. It is a good card. The only downside is that it's only during your opponent's turn, of course. So like when you're going second and you're trying to break a board, this card is just a special summon from hand with 2000 attack, right? If you go second, this doesn't do as much. Still, that is a powerful disruption in this day and age of Yu-Gi-Oh! This is a powerful disruption in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, if you can just put this thing, and you can summon this from the field, from the hand super easily, and it even gives you a spell and trap from your deck. So this card is good. Insanity, thank you for the prime, as well as 23. Thank you for the prime as well. Appreciate both of you. Welcome to the channel. Appreciate the first time subscriptions. Thank you. This card is good. Okay. Of course, you need to control Crystal God Tistina, this is where it might all fall apart, right? You know, it's one thing having to find this card and being able to just leave it on the board, you know, because you can't always do that, right? Just sometimes you need your cards for your combos, but this time, like, you know, that's the one thing. The other thing is you also need to have Crystal God Tistina, which we're gonna have to find out how easily you can get this thing into play, which is the secret rare of the archetype. So far, this one was ultra, and these two were super rares. This is the secret rare. 2000 attack, 3000 defense. During your main phase, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you send all face-up cards your opponent controls to the graveyard. Okay, so this has the same effect as this, but this one is a quick effect on your opponent's turn. This one is a board breaker effect on your turn. If this card in its owner's possession is destroyed by an opponent's card, you can change as many monsters your opponent controls as possible to face down defense position. Then you can send all face-up cards your opponent's control. You can only use each effect of Crystal God Tistina once per turn. Okay, this is what I was afraid of. This is what I was afraid of. Now, these effects are fine. These effects are completely fine, but it does not include an effect to summon itself onto the field. And this thing is level 10. And so far, let me tell you, so far there is not much going on here that that quote unquote cheats out your big dudes. All right, nothing here does that so far. We're gonna continue reading before we judge that. However, I think this makes this card a lot weaker, because for this effect to work, you know, you need to not only keep this thing around, but you also need to keep this thing around, which does nothing on your opponent's turn. Plus, you need to, first of all, get this thing onto the field. Now, even without this effect, let me be clear here, even without this secondary effect that I highlighted here, even with just this effect, this card would already be playable in pretty much any deck out there. Like, pretty much any deck out there would like a card that's like, if you control my archetype, you can just special summon me and add a spell and trap from your deck to your hand. This is already phenomenal. So I'm looking at it like, okay, this secondary effect, if the secondary effect was easy to pull off, this card would be absolutely insane. Thankfully, it's not as easy to pull off. So this is just basically, it's Sprite Jet. No, yeah, exactly. It's pretty much Sprite Jet for Tistina, which is really good still, right? Okay, we have a field spell. Divine Domain God Tistina field spell card. Let's see. During your main phase, you can send a Tistina monster from your deck to your grave. Then, if your opponent controls 3 or more face-up cards, you can special summon a Crystal God Tistina from your hand or deck. You can only use this effect once per turn. If this card in your field spell zone is destroyed by your opponent's card effect, you can special summon a Tistina monster from your deck or grave. This design, I'm just gonna lead by saying this design is phenomenal. I've been saying this a lot in the past, but this is wonderful card design. In my opinion, this is wonderful card design for the following reasons. This card is good going first, because it sends your the monsters that have a graveyard effect. You can just foolish a monster from your deck. It's not as good as just adding a card from your deck to your hand. It's not like those cheesy field spells, you know, all the planets where it's just like, just activate and add, always good, you know. Like, it's like, you can foolish these guys, right? But they don't always do something, right? You still need to do some work in order to use their effects from the graveyard. So it's good support, but it's not like a one card combo kind of thing that always, you know, does something. But then my favorite part about this card is that it has a bonus effect when you go second. And this is a design that I've been loving on cards in the past. I've been saying that a lot. Like, the first example that always comes to mind is the incredible Yugioh, where I love when they make cards that are perfectly fine going first, right? This card is completely reasonable when you start, but it gets better when you go second, and it gets significantly better when you go second. And that, in my opinion, is phenomenal card design, because it starts to solve the problem of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where going second is just inherently so much worse these days, right? And so I don't want to be forced to play a lot of cards in my deck that are only good when I go second. Cards like Evenly Matched, cards like Lightning Storm, and so on and so forth. A lot of people are playing those cards, but they are not really as consistent. They induce a lot of variance into the game, because when you go first, they do nothing. I like it when they design cards that do both, right? They go first well, but they also give you a little bit of a boost when you go second, right? Like Trickstar Light Stage, for example, was another one that's been mentioned in chat right now. It's like that's a cool card, I think, because it's just like, it's a consistency card going first, but it has a small bonus going second. Cards like that. Even Tearlaman's Havness. Of course, I'm not a fan of the fact that Havness had a lot of randomness in its effect, but in general, the concept of like a archetype hand trap that is like fine when you go first, but also gives you a little bit of an edge when you go second. I think that design is wonderful. So I think Divine Domain God Tistina is a very well designed card. Yeah, no, that's all I have. I enjoyed the design of this card. One thing that's worth noting here is that this secondary effect is interesting, because this card is so good when you go second, right? It's so good when you go second that your opponent would be really inclined to stop it from going off. However, if they stop it by destroying it, then you still get this effect, right? However, because it says if this card in your field zone is destroyed by your opponent's card effect, this will not help you outplay cards like Baronne de Fleur, for example, because Baronne de Fleur negates the activation, and when the activation is negated, the card never hits the field zone, right? And so you're not playing around all sorts of removal or all sorts of omni negates when you go second, right? In which case, honestly, I would say it would be way too powerful if it did that. Like, if it just said, if this card is destroyed by your opponent's card effect, you can do that. I think it would be way too busted. Set it first. Setting first does not make a difference. You might think it does, but it doesn't. When you set a card and then you flip it, during that moment, it's a little complicated. While you flip it, it is technically not considered on the field. If you flip this card in your field spell zone, your opponent negates the activation. It does not count as being destroyed in the field spell zone because it is... You're trying to put it face up into the field spell zone, but you're not successfully doing it. So that is not how it works, unfortunately. It is in another dimension, exactly. It's like if you flip Sangan, I believe when you flip Sangan and your opponent solemn warnings it, I don't believe you can search. Because you're flipping it and the summon gets negated. I don't believe it counts as being sent from the field to the graveyard. It's the same thing. So, yes, that's unfortunately not the thing. I will say this card, I think, would be a little bit too powerful going second if your opponent did not even have the option to negate it because you instantly get the other effect as well. Long story short, I said a lot of things, but I really enjoy the card design on this card. I think it is carefully balanced in a way where if your opponent goes a little bit too crazy going first and you don't stop them, you get a bonus effect on this card. And if your opponent tries to use something like a Ghost Ogre or a MST on it, which no one does, but like MST-like cards, like, I don't know, Sword Soul Blackout or whatever, then you get to still special summon. And going first, it's just fine. Going first, it is a Foolish Burial for Tistinas, which have graveyard effects, so that's nice. Okay, no, I really enjoy this card. I think it's well balanced. All right, we have Breath of the Tistina. Continuous spell card. During your main phase, you can normal summon a Tistina monster in addition to your normal summoner set. You can only gain this effect once per turn. You can target a face-up monster you control, or if you control a light Tistina, you can target a face-up monster on the field instead. Change that monster to face-down defense position, then add a Tistina card from your deck to your hand, except Breath of Tistina. You can only use this effect of Breath of Tistina once per turn. Again, similar concept as up here. When you go first, this card is completely fine, gives you a secondary normal summon, and you can search by booking your own card. But if you go second, you can technically book your opponent's cards if you can manage to put a light Tistina onto the field, which should arguably be a little bit hard. It's a little bit hard to do that. Like, when you go second, your opponent has a board. Usually they will use all their interruptions before you can get a light Tistina onto the field, then to book their card, but still, a nice bonus effect is a nice bonus effect. This card, I think, is not as strong. It would have been really nice if it let you ignore the tributes, like how Kashtira Birth, does it. But still not terrible. All right, now we have Signs of the Tistina. X Shipai, thank you for the 7 months. Appreciate you. Thank you so much. Continuous trap card. Activate this card by targeting a face-up monster on the field. Special summon this card as an effect monster with the following effect. It's also still a trap. During your opponent's turn, when that target leaves the field, destroy this card. During your opponent's turn, when this card leaves the field, destroy that target. This one I don't understand. This one I don't understand. It's a light. So, okay. It is a light monster, which is important. It is a monster. It is a light Tistina monster. That is important. However, the hell, like, it has no disruptive capabilities. It's like safe zone. No, okay. The way this card is supposed to be used. The way it's supposed to be used is you are supposed to target an opponent's monster, then you summon this thing, and then you're supposed to get rid of this card because when this card leaves the field, destroy the target. How are we getting rid of it, though? On the opponent's turn, we're not getting rid of it at all. Pop it with Sentinel? I mean, yes, but that's not a quick effect. That's not a quick effect. I'm not gonna put this card onto my opponent's monster, wait a turn, and then destroy it on my next turn. Now, that is not good. This card I don't really understand. I don't really understand this card. This is just way too weak from what I'm understanding. Like, yes, it is a light Tistina. It does count as a light Tistina monster because it has Tistina in its name and it's summoned as a light monster. So yes, it is a light Tistina monster, which is important for this deck, but it is a light Tistina monster that you can make use of on turn 3. Because if you go first, you have to set it first. If you go second, it's even worse because you can use it on turn 4. This card is awful. Now, I will say this is a wave of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cards. And out of these 7 cards, I'm gonna be honest with you, I like 6 out of 7. Which is still relatively good in terms of, you know, if you compare that to recent other, you know, archetypes, there's been like less promising ones. I will say so far, after Duelist Nexus, I don't think this deck has a functioning concept yet. I don't think this deck has a functioning concept as of now. I think it's missing some stuff. Most notably, I'm kind of missing the synergy between like booking your own cards and destroying your own cards, because Sentinel destroys your own cards. This thing books your own cards. So far, I don't see any synergy with that whatsoever. Which I find a little disturbing, right? I mean, it's okay. They can make like an archetype around booking your opponent's cards, but there's not that much synergy with that right now. And then booking your own cards is also in this archetype, but it has like 0 synergy, right? And so, yeah. Another thing that the deck also lacks is a starter. In terms of, I'm looking at all the monsters here, and all of these monsters want you to have Tistina cards already on the field, right? For the small dudes, you need to control a light Tistina even. And for the Demigod, you need to control any Tistina. However, there is no Tistina card in here that gives you an incentive to place it on the field first, right? The first Tistina you're gonna put onto the field is always gonna feel like a waste, right? You're gonna normal summon the Hound, which you don't want to normal summon the Hound because you could just special summon it, right? Why would I? You know, they are lacking something like, you know, when this card is normal summoned, you can add a Tistina from your deck to your hand, those kind of things, right? A very simplified effect right there, of course. That is something that I'm missing here. It's like a concept where do we begin, right? Okay, all of these cards are good when I already have Tistinas on the field, but which one is the Tistina that I'm meant to summon first? There's none. There's nothing here, right? There's nothing here that I can just summon and be happy about it. So, and the same is true for the field spell. Yeah, the field spell sends a Tistina from your deck to the grave, which is great because they have 2 Tistina monsters that just come back from the graveyard for free and provide a bonus effect. Yeah, phenomenal, right? Being able to foolish these is great. But what am I supposed to mention what am I supposed to combine the field spell with in order to be happy, right? Like, what am I like, okay, I need a Tistina that I want to put onto the field. So, you know, that is what I'm looking for in the second wave of Tistinas, is like a concept behind it, right? Because as of now, there is no real concept. They have a couple of really good standalone cards, but they are not really providing any concept of how am I supposed to use these cards, because it's just like all these cards are standalone good, but I don't think that's enough just yet. However, of course, there is another wave of Tistina cards coming, and if those cards are good, I can definitely see Tistina being a viable strategy, especially if they provide an easier way to get a light Tistina into play. If there's an easy way to get a light Tistina into play, I think this is going to be a potentially playable archetype. But for now, sadly, I don't think it's useful, which I think begs the question of why are they doing it this way every time? Why is it? Because it's been like that with all of the recent TCG only archetypes. All the world premiere archetypes have always been released in 2 waves, and I remember every time I'm sitting here and I'm looking at the first wave of support and I'm like, okay, some of these cards are good, some of these cards aren't as great, but like overall, okay, kind of cool, right? And then, but it's never enough. It's never enough to actually play the deck, right? You couldn't play Gold Pride with the first wave. You couldn't play Goaty with the first wave. Like, all those recent world premiere archetypes have not been playable with the first wave, right? It's just not possible. I guess my theory, what I just thought about was maybe they want to get people hyped for the archetype before it actually is playable. You know, the first wave is not meant to make you play the deck. It's more like a teaser, right? It's more like, hey, if you like these cards, there's more coming in the next set, right? And also, it might get people to spend money on an archetype that ends up being not good, right? Like, let's say they released all Goaties at the same time, they would have been a lot less successful, actually, probably, because, like, everyone would have known from the get-go that Goaty is not going to be good, right? And when they do it in 2 parts, it's always like there's always this speculative aspect to it of like, hey, right now it's not that good, but maybe they're gonna get great support with the next set, so I'm gonna pick up these cards just in case, right? And that sells them a couple extra product, right? Which you could argue if that's the best way to do it, right? But surely it does work sometimes. I've been like that in the past. I've done it sometimes. You know, I've picked up. I remember I opened a case of Power of the Elements and I kept the Goaties around because I wasn't sure whether it was going to be good or not, right? And so, questionable decision to do it that way, but I think that might be the reason. I think that might be the reason of, like, you know, they wanna have people speculating that, like, those cards might actually be better than they will be, right? Yeah. That's Godo. Think of it 13 months. Does this deck need a Link 1? I mean, that's the thing, right? That's the hypothetical thing, because think about what would happen if they gave, just for a second, think about what would happen if they gave them a Link 1 Light. Imagine that. Even if it was a freaking vanilla, that would be completely insane. Because you could just normal summon Sentinel, link it off into a Link 1 Light Tistina, it comes back from the graveyard, it can add. Imagine they did something like that. It would be completely out of this world broken if they did that, right? A Link 1 Light Tistina that adds the field spell. Yeah, it would be insane. I think that would be crazy. Would it though? I mean, think about it. Okay, you start with Sentinel of the Tistina. In a world where there's a Link 1 Light Tistina, even if it's a vanilla. Look at this. Okay, normal summon Sentinel, link it off for the Link 1, bring back Sentinel, then you can destroy 1 Tistina to add a Tistina card from deck to the hand. And you just add Demigod of the Tistina, which you can special summon because you still control the Tistina card. And then you special it, you add a Tistina spell and trap from deck to your hand, which means you can add the field spell or the other spell from deck to hand. And then you activate that, you can Foolish the Hound, which also comes back. So you created a lot of card advantage off of just a normal summon. So I think that would be very good. Field spell is not a Tistina card. Now, what are these letters here in the back of the name of the field spell? Can someone tell me in chat what these letters mean? Because I'm not quite sure what it means. Because it can't be Tistina, right? It's not a Tistina card. So whatever this means, yeah. It's not a Tistina card, unfortunately. Okay, well. To get this to a close, to come to an end here on the Tistina archetype, I think so far the deck is not going to be playable, of course. I don't think it's meant to be playable with just one wave of support. You can think of the way they're doing. You can think about that whatever you want. I think it's a little bit weird that you always have to speculate on these, right? I would have preferred to see the entire archetype and know if it was good or not. However, that's not the world we're living in. As of now, we have to speculate. I'm going to tell you, if the next wave of support is good, then I could see this being good, which is kind of like a no-brain answer that you can make pretty much every time on the first wave of support, but it is what it is. I think some of these cards are nice. The best one is by far this one. The Demigod is by far the best card in my opinion, and the best design award goes to the field spell. I love the field spell design. Maybe the field spell will be searchable with Tistina Circular. Yes. Sneaky Steve, thank you for the 4 months. All right, and that is Tistina.